Hello there, and welcome back. So, picture a construction project that lasts for, 1,500 years.
That is a long time.
Right. It's massive. It involved extracting and moving something like 29,000 solid boulders. And some of these weigh up to 10 tons each across this huge geographic belt.
And, doing all of that without a single written blueprint.
Exactly. And that is exactly where our deep dive starts today. We are looking at this fascinating stack of sources spanning archaeology, musical biography, and even some modern cultural travel guides. All of it is centered on the Gambia and the wider Senegambia region in West Africa.
Yeah, and it's a region that, it completely shatters that typical beach holiday perspective that people have.
Oh, totally. We've all seen those tourist brochures, right? The ones that reduce a whole country to like a pristine stretch of sand and an all-inclusive buffet.
Right, exactly. But our sources reveal a place where the past isn't just cordoned off behind velvet museum ropes. The history is literally walking down the street. It's driving the rhythm of the local beach bar, and, it dictates the very psychology of how people interact there today.
Okay, let's unpack this, because to truly understand the living, breathing culture of the Gambia today, we really have to look at its literal bedrock. I am talking about the stone circles of Senegambia.
Oh, those are just incredible.
They really are. Our archaeological sources detail this geographic belt that's about 100 kilometers wide and stretches 350 kilometers long, mostly hugging the Gambia River.
Yeah.
And across this vast area, there are over 1,000 individual stone circles.
Which is exactly why they were designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site back in 2006.
Makes total sense.
Right. And when you count the standing stones making up those circles, you hit that 29,000 number you mentioned earlier. But, the material itself is what makes this a real engineering marvel.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that.
Because these aren't just like granite boulders that happen to be lying around. They're actually made of laterite.
Right, and I was trying to wrap my head around that, because laterite is an iron-rich rock, right? So how do ancient builders quarry and shape thousands of perfect cylindrical or polygonal columns without modern steel machinery?
Well, what's fascinating here is the geological quirk of laterite itself. It forms when heavy tropical rainfall basically leaches away soluble minerals from the soil.
Okay.
And that leaves behind this highly concentrated residue of iron and aluminum oxides. But crucially, while it is still underground and saturated with water, it's actually relatively soft.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it has almost a clay-like consistency.
So they were essentially carving it like dense earth, not like, chipping away a hard stone.
Precisely. Yeah, they could use iron picks to carve these massive, mathematically precise pillars right out of the bedrock.
That is wild.
But the moment you extract that laterite and expose it to the sun and the air, all those iron oxides cure. It hardens into this incredibly dense, rock-solid material.
Okay, so that solves the shaping problem, but it definitely doesn't solve the physics problem. The average stone is, 1 to 2.5 meters tall and weighs 7 tons?
Yeah, they are massive.
And at one specific site, Kerbach, they are dealing with 10-ton stones. Even if you roll them on logs, the sheer caloric energy and manpower required to drag 10 tons across the African landscape is just staggering.
I'll have to look.
It demands a highly stratified, intensely organized society.
And that level of organization usually implies, a heavily bureaucratic state with written records.
Right.
But this society managed it entirely through oral tradition and deeply ingrained communal structures.
Right.
And the timeline of this mobilization is what truly boggles the mind. The circles themselves were erected roughly between the 8th and 16th centuries AD.
Right, but our sources indicate the burials beneath those stones date all the way back to the 3rd century BC.
Exactly, which means this specific landscape was being actively used for elite funerary practices for, over 1,000 years before they even started putting the giant stones up.
I keep comparing this 1,500-year span to building a European cathedral, right? You have generations of stonemasons working on the same structure in France or Germany, passing down the blueprints and the geometry.
Sure.
But without a written language in Senegambia, how does a society maintain the exact same architectural and ritualistic focus for a millennium and a half?
Well, the physical stones themselves likely served as the architectural and cultural anchor. They weren't just like tombstones marking a grave.
Oh, they weren't.
No, archaeologists believe these circles were critical social and political hubs. So if you needed to resolve a conflict between communities, or maybe form a trade alliance, or even manage agricultural cycles, you do it at the circles.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and there is often a distinct Eastern headstone positioned just outside the main perimeter, which strongly suggests some astronomical tracking for solstices.
Oh, wow.
But, the most profound archaeological discovery here isn't actually the stones, it's what was happening to the bodies underneath them.
The secondary burials? Yes. I read that section of the source material like 3 times to make sure I was understanding it correctly.
Yeah, it fundamentally changes how we view their society.
Yeah.
Because excavations revealed that a lot of the skeletons found beneath the circles were disarticulated.
Meaning the bones had been physically moved?
Exactly. So a person would die and be buried somewhere else entirely.
Yeah.
Then, years or perhaps even decades later, their remains were exhumed and transported to the stone circles.
Just to be buried again.
Yes, to be interred alongside elite ancestors and other community members.
The sheer physical effort of that is astounding. I mean, they are dragging 10-ton stones across the earth and simultaneously digging up the bones of their ancestors and moving them miles across the country just to make sure everyone is physically together in the same plot of soil.
It's incredible dedication.
It really speaks to a society where the concept of the individual is just entirely secondary to the community.
And that is really the central through line of this entire region. The social survival of Senegambia has always relied on erasing that boundary between the individual and the community.
Right.
And that relentless, multi-generational dedication to communal memory, well, it didn't vanish when they stopped carving laterite. It just changed mediums.
It moved from the stones to the music.
Exactly. It moved from the silent stones into the living breath of West African music.
Which brings us to the griot tradition. So in Mandinka culture, the griot, or jelly, is the hereditary historian, storyteller, and musician, right?
Yes, they are essentially the living, breathing archives of the society.
And the tool they use to maintain that archive is the kora.
Right, and the kora is just an acoustic masterpiece. It is a 21-stringed harp. The body is built from this massive calabash gourd that's been halved and covered tightly with cowskin to create a resonator.
But the mechanics of playing it are what truly confused me at first. I mean, you have 21 strings, but the musician is gripping 2 vertical handposts. So they only use their thumbs and index fingers to pluck the strings. How do you get such a massive wall of sound out of just 4 digits?
It requires a fundamental rewiring of the brain's neuromotor pathways, honestly. The kora is designed to be polyrhythmic.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Meaning the thumbs handle the deep, driving bass lines, while the index fingers simultaneously weave these complex, rapid-fire treble melodies on top.
Oh, wow. So it's like a pianist playing a heavy bass rhythm with their left hand and a frantic Mozart solo with their right, but all condensed into the space of a gourd, using only 4 fingers.
That's a great way to put it. And doing it flawlessly while reciting centuries of genealogical history at the same time.
That is mind-blowing.
Because of that immense complexity, the knowledge is fiercely guarded. Historically, kora playing is strictly reserved for just 5 principal griot families.
Only 5?
Just 5. And the training begins in early childhood, and it has historically flowed in one direction from father to son.
Okay, this sets the stage perfectly for the ultimate disruptor in our biographical sources. Sona Jobarta. She was born in London in 1983, and she is the very first female professional kora player to come from one of those 5 griot families.
Yes, and her lineage is absolute royalty. She is the granddaughter of the legendary Amadou Bansang Jobarta and the cousin of Toumani Diabaté, who is arguably the most globally recognized kora player in modern history.
But as a woman, the traditional path of father-to-son transmission was closed off to her.
Right.
She still managed to start learning at age 3, though, from her brother and eventually from her father. But then she pivots. She doesn't just immerse herself in the oral tradition.
No, she goes a different route.
She actually enrolls at the Royal College of Music and the Purcell School in the UK, studying classical cello, piano, and composition.
And that decision creates this incredibly rare artistic collision. You have an artist who is deeply rooted in the most rigorous, ancient, inherited oral tradition of West Africa, but who is simultaneously armed with the formal, structural analysis of the European classical written tradition.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because my immediate assumption was that she would do what a lot of, world music fusion artists do. I totally expected her to play classical Bach on the kora or just slap a hip-hop beat underneath it to make it palatable for Western pop audiences.
A lot of artists do take that route, mostly because it's commercially safe. But her classical composition training actually taught her how to deconstruct sound.
Okay.
So when she was commissioned to score the 2009 documentary film Motherland, she faced a major acoustic problem. Cinematic scores usually rely on massive sweeping Western string sections to convey emotion.
Right, like big orchestra swells.
Exactly. Or they lean heavily into generic stereotypical drum beats to signify Africa. And Sona Jobarta rejected both of those approaches.
So what did she do? I mean, if the kora doesn't have the right sonic profile for a film score and you refuse to use a cello, how do you solve the problem?
Well, she literally invented a new instrument.
Wait, really?
Yeah, she created the nkoni. It is a hybrid acoustic creation that crosses the traditional kora with the danso ngoni.
Okay, our sources mention the danso ngoni is a hunter's harp, but I have no idea how that differs acoustically from the kora.
So a danso ngoni is typically a 6-stringed instrument tuned to a pentatonic scale, and it produces a much deeper, more resonant, almost guttural bass sound compared to the higher, cascading diatonic tones of the kora.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so by engineering the nkoni, Sona Jobarta used her Western understanding of acoustic frequencies and orchestration to bridge these two ancient African instruments.
That is brilliant.
She expanded the low-end vocabulary of her music so she could score a film with intense emotional gravity, entirely avoiding Western cinematic crutches.
So she used her classical European training not to dilute her Mandinka heritage, but to actually amplify it on its own terms. She expanded the architectural blueprint of the music, much like those ancient builders adding stones to the circles over centuries.
That is the perfect analogy. And, the beauty of this musical tradition is that it hasn't been locked away in a concert hall somewhere. If you want to hear Master Kora playing today, you don't have to sit in stiff silence in a European auditorium.
No, you absolutely don't. And this bridges us directly into our modern travel sources. To hear this music, you step right into the electric pulse of Gambian social life. Specifically, the travel guides point us to the Senegambia Strip in Kololi.
Oh yeah, it's a 300-meter pedestrianized hub that completely redefines the concept of tourist nightlife.
The rhythm of the evening is fascinating to me. It starts with dinner around 6 to 8 p.m., and then the crowds flow out to open-air beach bars. And right there, sitting outside under the Atlantic breeze, you have master kora players setting up.
It's amazing.
I honestly initially wondered if this was just a tacky tourist trap, like amateurs playing for tips.
Well, the economic realities of the region dictate otherwise, actually. Becoming a professional griot takes a lifetime of training. But finding a sustainable income strictly through traditional ceremonies is incredibly difficult now.